Do it live.
I know. Takes a minute. It's easy that you can just hit a button and it'll do it. All right. Here we go. We are live. Week 7. We're at halftime. Thursday night football. It seems like no better time than to start a podcast. So let's do that. This has not been the best year for podcasts. It's certainly been below the standard, but that's all right. We've got a great guest here this week, Mr. Tates, to raise the standard of the show and say hi to everyone and let everyone know that you're here and give us an update how your players are performing tonight.
Hello, everybody. Because I'm on my phone and not on my computer, I can't see the latest of what my star players, Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave, are doing. You might note for the record that my team's namesake, Lawrence of Arabia, for Trevor Lawrence. Trevor is on my bench this week after some lackluster performances. But anyway, I think the Saints, my guys, are playing like Saints. Alvin just keeps getting a lot of touches. What's he got there? Can't even see on my phone here.
Alvin's got 10 points so far.
10 without even a touchdown. Look at that. Yeah. So, no, I feel good about the two Saints. I like taking Alvin at good value, 5th or 6th round, coming off the suspension. I won't be the moral police here. I don't, anyway. So feeling good. I think my other macro comment about my team this year, I think I'm the worst 4-2 team in the history of the league, second fewest points in the league, somehow 4-2, and looking like I could very well be 6-2 based on my matchups the next 2 weeks. So it's a weird one. And
I 91 points a week. Man.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah. So my instinct is to be a seller, and we can get to that. But for now, I'm 4-2, working on another W right now in a very strong division.
Very strong division. Certainly one where it's going to be interesting come the end of the season. Yeah, it's a very strong division, by far the strongest. Certainly could get 3, maybe even 4 playoff teams. Who really knows? But yeah, it will certainly matter. I think at the end of the season here, those intra-division matchups. Joe swept the first round of division matchups, and each of you, the other 3 in your division, you, Paul, and Manny, each picked up a win. But that's going to be big. Who can? So if one of you can get 2 division wins down the stretch there at the end of the year, that might be enough to really get into the playoffs and even get a good seed. Who knows? Definitely interesting. 91 points a week, man. Ooh, that's rough.
Look, my optimum. I've made some bad choices, as you know. Oh, well, we should talk about our matchup in a second. But I will just say, I would just say in the division, I've got 2 things going for me. 1, Joe's got some injuries, and 2, Paul is Paul. So I feel, based on those facts, that I stand a chance.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've put 83.6% of your optimal points on the field, which
is that the worst in the league? No,
God, no. Wagner.
Okay, it looks like it's the third worst in the league, I think. Okay.
Yes. Evan is also probably tanking hard or just not very good. He doesn't probably check it enough. So yeah, he's at 82.11%. I mean, look, most people are in that,
mid to high 80s. I'm low 80s.
Mid to high 80s. So you're not far off from the league average. I mean, most people aren't scoring above 90. 3 teams are above 92.5%, which is rather exceptional, I think. But yeah, I mean, we can get into that matchup and stat correction. Certainly, I don't know. Let's start with this though. Obviously, we had a trade within the league between 2 competitive teams this past week. What are your thoughts? There's been a lot that's been made a little bit there in the group chat about whether or not this is balanced or not. I'm curious to. I've thoughts from
I have a lot of thoughts. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I threw in a little jab there about Devin's speed, which was neither here nor there. But I actually had inside information. I saw Paul last week in DC. We had some drinks, and he told me this trade. He was trying to make it happen, and at the time I said to him, but when I didn't, I was like, "Oh, I don't think you're really able to get that deal done. Like, I think you're a little bit delusional." But he got it done. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna." Like, what else are you throwing in? But as I think about it more, I don't know. I take LeMagna's point that rest of season rankings on Flea Flicker, or sorry, on Fantasy Pros or whatever ranking you want to use. Yeah, maybe Eckler's 5, but I look at the body of work this year. He's been out. Said one game that was good, one game that wasn't very good. Devin is part of this new phenomenon in Miami. You never know; it could be a flash in the pan, but the sort of option value upside for someone who's not trying to play for this year. Yeah, I think Paul should. I think if I was, it was Boston, right? Who did the trade? Yeah, I would have probably wanted a little more, but I don't think I'm not with Lavagna that was so grotesque that shouldn't be allowed. I don't. I think I would say the trade favored Paul, but not so dramatically that it shouldn't be allowed. I don't know.
I mean, I think I think Paul's clearly the trade winner. I mean, it's once I saw that they had made this trade, I texted them both, in a single chat, and was sort of like, explain this to me. And I think Paul was sort of thought that I thought that he was a loser in it. I very much the opposite. I think Paul, this is, if you're gonna ever say there's a trade rape, I mean, this is kind of what it looks like, right? Devon Achane is out. He's on IR through week 10. The Dolphins then have through week 9. Dolphins have a week 10 bye. He can't play again until week 11. So you're effectively not getting him for another month. And yeah, he has keeper value. That's all fine, but you don't make trades based on what a guy did. You make a trade based on what you think is going to happen. This isn't like free agency where you're sort of paying a guy for past performance because you want to make him happy to stay. Eckler, if healthy, I mean, he is a potential top 2 or 3 at the position, and Achane is not the starter and hurt with an undisclosed knee injury. I think it's fairly unbalanced. I don't think it's so egregious you can't, allow it. I obviously did, but in my mind, it's close to borderline, just because Bodson's 3-3. Whether or not this is a keeper move or not is really not material to me. I just feel like the value in the two players is rather, disparate, rather wide apart. I mean, CBS trade value rankings put them basically 20 points apart in terms of rest of season value. I think that's fair.
20 spots? 20 spots
No,
apart?
20 points. No, I mean, I don't know. It's something like close to 20 spots. I mean, Eckler's the number 2 running back, and Achane is, and I can count it for you. It's, he's down fairly low. And I'll do the math right here. So yeah, Eckler is number 2 rest of season. Achane is number 17. So 15 spots apart, 21 points in terms of value. That's what I mean. Well, I think it's hard because it's a keeper league.
So I want to come back to the keeper point, but what is the actual rule in the Constitution? Is there one of defining what's an unfair trade?
No, it's to uphold like league integrity. I mean, I'm not going to veto a trade just because I don't personally like it, or I don't think it doesn't help me or make someone else stronger. To me, it's really, I'm looking for like if there's some kind of collusion or something smells really fishy, or is the trade just so beyond fair? It's so far from being something that would be reasonable that look, you should step in. In this situation, Paul's just throwing out ridiculous Achane trade offers, and Bodson bid. I mean, that's really what happened here. I mean, Paul wanted, just to give context, he wanted Achane for Diggs straight up. I told him no. I mean, that doesn't, that's what this is. Paul's looking around, wanting to get rid of Achane, and he's just making 1-for-1 offers, and he got lucky. I just think on a value standpoint, this is like Paul paying 30 or 40 cents on the dollar for Eckler, in my mind.
But so, and remind me, per the Constitution, you have unilateral authority to veto, or is it a league vote?
No, it's just me. Have you ever voted on a league trade?
I guess probably not. I guess I thought maybe there would be a 2-step process where you could flag something for review and then the league would vote. It wouldn't be that you veto it in one go. It would be maybe that you say, hey, I don't know about this trade. Let's vote on it as a league. That's what I thought maybe would happen.
I mean, if I thought something was really, beyond the pale, I would probably reach out to multiple people and take the temperature of the room and certainly, be willing to put it up for consideration and some, or feedback from the league. But I mean, I'd like to think that I'm, as impartial as I can be, and try to be very, consistent.
Oh no, I don't question your integrity
you know.
or your intent at all.
Yeah, no,
was
I
just
know you're not.
questioning the process and understanding it.
No,
So
I mean,
okay,
it's
so
yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's the rule. I don't have it verbatim in front of me, but it's essentially like, for as long as we're maintaining a fair and competitive league, as long as something's not egregious, I'm not going to veto it, because look, you're never going to have equal value, right? It's just not how it works. People have different perspectives, different opinions. That's all fine with me. I'm not here to play referee on whether or not I think it's equal. I just think in this particular instance, there's a rather large disparity, not enough to say no, but it did kind of go. I think it's borderline. If it were like Achan for, I don't know, like, I guess like McCaffrey, I'd probably be like, nah, I don't know that I can do, like, I think that would be too much. Eckler, given the injury this year, the performance, like, okay, I understand it. I'll buy it. But I just don't think it's that far from being at a point where you go, wow, this is really out of whack. But again, I'm not going to step in unless I think it's really egregious, because that would not be a fair process for the league to just impose like a personal opinion. But yeah, obviously this was sort of shocking because Paul had made essentially the same offer to me. And I went, in what world would I do that? 5 weeks into the season or something, 6 weeks into the season. But every owner is going to have different strategy, and that's fine. So, it's just interesting to see that kind of deal, because we rarely see true one-for-one deals happen. And, this one is, especially when it's a guy on IR, right? I think that's a big part of this, is one player's not playing for the next month.
Yeah.
If not longer.
Well, right. Clearly, Boston's thinking about the future and obviously valuing the keeper, which I think has to be part, like, I guess, for a trade to be fair, you have to factor in the whole value of the player. And I would also say I would push back slightly and you're like, oh, he's a backup. He's a backup like Alvin Kamara was a backup, 7 years ago to Mark Ingram, right? It's like, you can have a power two committee sometimes where you have such a high powered offense that the number two is a top 10 running back. I mean, so that's what how he's been playing.
Yeah, no, I don't have any problem with someone. Look, I think HN is very much a startable running back when he's healthy. To me, I look at it as, yes, there's keeper value, but I think that's like, it's hard because everyone's going to value the keeper potential differently alongside or against the injury, because he should return this year. We don't know what that looks like, but he should be fine, obviously, going forward next year. And there's obviously great potential. So because it's an imperfect calculus, it's something where I don't want, I'm not going to veto that. But the antenna went up, kind of, and I'm not afraid to say, look, I think someone got completely, fleeced. That's what I think happened here. But Bodson made the deal. At the same time, he fleeced me in a way earlier in the year because I didn't realize I'd left the trade open and I paid the price for that. But that's okay. That's how this works. It's fantasy. That's part of it. And I don't mind. I'm not going to cry foul.
Remind the listeners and also me, actually, what was the trade that he left open?
So I think after like week 1 or something, I had offered like Rashad White for Anthony Richardson. And
then Richardson.
You can put like time periods, right? You can say a trade's open for a day, a week, whatever. And I just didn't realize, I just let it just an open trade offer. And to Botson's credit, he went online, he saw it and said, oh, okay, sure, I'll do that. I need a running back. Obviously you can't predict Richardson's then going to come back, play well, and then be out for the year. So, I lived with it. It's my fault. No problem, but I'm sure Bodson would have been like, okay, yeah, no problem. We'll take it back. But that's not fair to him. That's not fair to the league in terms of how that all transpired. So, I'm not going to hold myself to a different standard or benefit myself separately. And same, likewise, I'm not going to interject my own personal opinion of whether or not something is something I would have done, is whether or not it's acceptable. So, it's always interesting to see and unpack different people's perspectives and opinions on something like that, where there's such a wide spread of thoughts. So
Yep.
that's all. But let's switch gears a little bit. Obviously, you were the fortunate beneficiary of my hubris and stat corrections, of course. So how did that make you feel a couple weeks ago?
Vindicated, proud. Look, it's so funny that we were texting about the matchup. I offered you an opportunity to wager on the matchup, and then you respectfully declined. And then I was like, oh, I dodged a bullet. I lost. And I'm like, oh, you're really not going to, well, just to play this out for the listeners. I think we were texting, and who was the player you had that you benched? It was receiver on the Packers. What's his name?
Yeah. So Christian Watson was playing Monday Night Football, and I chose.
And you were up 0.09 points. Is that correct?
I was up 0.09 going into Monday Night Football. I'll pull it up.
Right, pull it up. So, and your stated goal was, look, you could have had an honest thing where you said, hey, you never know, freaky things happen. You get a negative rushing yard on an end around,
or maybe a fumble, right?
Or fumble. But let's be honest, receivers getting negative points is pretty unheard of, right? So,
sure.
The real reason, let's admit, for the group here, the real reason you wanted to do it, which you also texted me, was I want the record, which had been talked about on the group thread a couple of days or weeks before, for the smallest. Like, what? Who wants that record? I don't even know.
Hey, man, I just want to be in the record books.
You wanted that record, and you intentionally benched a player who got how many points? Let's see. How many points did he get that week?
He finished with 10.1 points. Yeah, so it would have been an easy.
So win. Not only would you have won, who knows at the end of the year if those 10 points matter in points per game or whatever tiebreakers, but not only would you have won, but you would have gotten 10 more points. And then ironically, and how much do I actually, I don't even know. Do I now hold the record for smallest margin of victory?
No, you do not. No, the smallest margin of victory is like 0.12 or something. It is very small.
Okay, fine.
It's well under half a point. No. You don't.
I don't have that. I don't have that pleasure. But
5.
No. But to have a stat correction, I don't know. Well, I think I will petition for this to be added to the Constitution. Maybe it's not a record per se, but it's just almost like the Guinness Book of World Records type of bullet point. I'm now the only manager to ever win a game on a stat correction. Is that true?
I believe it's true. But see, so the crazy thing about this was, and where is it? Maybe it's not. What is it showing me?
I don't even remember what the stat correction was. Well, yeah, what was it?
Well, so the stat correction. So maybe I can find it. Let me see where corrections. Okay, so to be fair, Monday Night Football happens. The next morning, I'm credited with the win. Here's in the standings. So that's Tuesday. Stat corrections come in on Wednesday to change it from a win to a loss. And the reason is the Ravens were given an additional tackle for loss. On a team that had played Sunday, the correction doesn't come in until Wednesday. And that's the difference right there. Is the stat correction was this additional tackle for loss.
So if we had studied the ESPN box score or something, could we have known this one was coming?
Yeah,
I reconciliation.
Could have gone to like the NFL.com box score and probably like realized there was going to be a stat correction, and sure, yes, I could have done that. However, I have a job and a child. I don't have the kind of
You'd have to do that for all 9 players on my team.
Right. I would have had to do that
frankly.
For every player and every player on my team. And I had already gone through the Redskins that Thursday night. That's why I had no confidence and didn't want to bet you. I did the podcast with Paul Thursday night during the Redskins-Bears. The Redskins defense, or the Commanders defense, I should say, was terrible. -6.5 points. I mean,
they really got after Paul in the press conference after the game when he was at the mic. I saw that. Yeah, that was
right, tough. Right. So, look, at the end of the day, I also started Javonte Williams. He didn't end up playing. I mean, effectively, you beat a team that had 6 players. I didn't start. I benched one guy. One guy I started didn't play, and a third was -6.5. So you basically beat a team of 6 guys. So I got golf clap for that.
Well, hold on. Let's everyone's got their sob story. You'll notice James Conner at 4.6 Khalil Herbert 7.6. They both got injured in the first half of their respective games and were out for the game. So I'm down, half
I'm just
three
saying.
quarters of player, maybe down a player and a half.
All right, fine. 7 to 9 then. I mean, 7 to 9,
Yeah.
right?
Fair, whatever.
Look, it is what it is. I don't think my team is better than 500 at the end of the day anyway. That's kind of where I think I'm going to finish, one or two games, either 500 or one or two games below. Just sort of feels like that's the quality of my team unless there's drastic things happen. So I don't have visions of grandeur, but it was a little disappointing to get the stat correction loss, but kudos to you. I got, a little overconfident there and I paid the price, Flew too close to the sun, I guess. So
some might say. Well,
yes, exactly.
I was gleeful when I woke up to that. So that
I would imagine. Yeah. I would imagine. Yeah, it's definitely the first time I'm aware that it's swung a matchup, and who knows? I mean, you never know. It's something that you don't think about, right? Because most of the matchups aren't close enough. They're not within a point or two, or half a point. Because stat corrections usually just aren't significant enough. They're rather small, and they probably don't even. They don't probably only.
Yeah, it's not like you ever miss a
players.
touchdown. Oh, the scoring missed the touchdown. That never happens. It's right. It's a tackle for a loss. That's apropos for what stat correction is. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you look at the stat corrections for that week, it was 4 of the 5 people or players impacted were defenses, and the other one was a receiver who were fumbled and recovered a fumble. So it's basically impacting defenses more than anything because it's not going to really. You would think that the rushing and receiving type stats are accurate in the game. So it's all these other forced fumble, tackle for loss, passes defended type of stuff. So, I mean, yeah, like I said, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. It's just one of those funny things that happened, and I'll live on.
Onwards. All right. So
exactly.
Onwards for your team, onwards for the podcast. Where next, Mr. Commissioner, on the topic?
Well, no,
topic of,
you tell me where you want to go. I mean, here we are. We're almost at the halfway point of the regular season. It's been a very strong year for your division. It's been a very interesting year. We've got 5 teams at 4-2. We've got basically like a very large group of teams that all seem to be good or competitive. And then we've got a couple of terrible teams. I don't know where you want to take that, if you want to even discuss it at all. You can certainly address whether or not Wagner's tanking, despite the fact that he claims otherwise. It certainly appears to be tanking. The floor is yours.
Yeah, it's funny. I was in the morning of the draft in Chicago with Wagner. I was telling him my, quote unquote strategy because I had weak draft assets. I'm just going to trade down more and get more middle round picks, which is what I did. And it wasn't pretty, but I was able to execute it to some degree to have a team that's 4-2, even though it might be the worst 4-2 team in the history of the league. Wagner went ahead and executed that strategy, and you can see what his season became. So I don't know. I think there's luck in that. We both were not coming from positions of strength. I think he's coming off a year where he had, I think it was last year, right? He had a monster, or maybe it was 2 years ago. Or was it last year? I can't remember. He had a monster team one of the past 2 years, right?
Yeah, so last year he had a really strong team, and you kind of mortgage some of the future right for that.
Exactly. So that's the look, and I think we all acknowledge that's reality. And we don't want to have anybody tanking week 3, 4, but the reality of this league is, at least the way the incentives are set up now, it's a lot of people. You're either a buyer or seller, and you sort of, unless you're Joe or maybe LaMagna, you sort of can get into an every other year cycle of being good and bad. I've seen it happen myself. So, I don't want to fault him for, playing the game, and he went for it last year, and he's paying the price this year, and he's getting himself some assets and setting it up again for next year. So, that is what it is. I never count Joe out despite his injuries. But we'll see. And I don't know. Kirshner's team, I think, is really good, but I don't see a team like, again, I'll toot my own horn from 2 years ago, even though I didn't win. I don't see like a team that's super dominant. I don't see that. I see a pretty good deal of parity this year in the league.
I think there's a lot of parity, and I know I said it after the draft. I thought there might be one or two really strong teams, and I think most everyone else is fairly competitive. Obviously, injuries can happen, and you don't know how it all play out. I do think Kirshner's team is fairly strong, particularly once he gets through all the bye weeks. He's through a lot of his key buys already. He still has McCaffrey and Lamar Jackson to come, but after this week, Keenan Allen and Mike Evans already had their bye week. Jamar Chase is this week. David Montgomery's in a couple weeks. I mean, Kirshner's going to be set up pretty good here pretty soon. So that's definitely the strongest team. I mean, he's averaging almost 130 points a week, 129 and 0.4. That's pretty impressive so far. It's by far the best in the league. I don't know how, all it takes is one injury and it completely changes your team, particularly if someone like McCaffrey, gets hurt. But, I think it's a league. I try to look at seasons and take more, what's the larger picture? What can we learn or maybe improve on? I don't know. I don't know what the solution is to like somebody in week 2 or 3 just deciding to punt on their season. I think that's a hard one for me.
Well, maybe there's
fair enough.
just spitballing here.
Yeah.
What if there's a trade deadline? What if there's a trade starting point and you just can't make trades before week 5 or something? You only can make trades between weeks 5 and 8 or 9 or whatever. I'm making it up.
Yeah. I mean, I'm open to all suggestions. I think that's a good one, having like a sort of an open period to trade players. Yeah, I don't think I don't have the solution. I'm certainly open to it. I think it's a good idea. I think that's certainly one of the ones that I've thought about and considered. I don't like from an integrity perspective, a situation where, and I mean, look, it could apply to any owner, any season, of just saying, look, I'm just going to accumulate assets for the future and punt, and it's week 2. I think that makes it difficult because then that's an auto win and everybody sort of benefits from that. But is that really competitively fair? I don't know. I think that's where I struggle. But look, I mean, we've seen it in professional sports, right? Lots of professional teams tank. They want to trust the process. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Certainly fantasy can be that every other year cycle in a keeper league or where there's draft pick trading. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think it's always something to be considered. It's not necessarily something that we have to deal with today, but I'm open to suggestions.
Oh, you know what? I owe Justin an apology. I thought he was 5-1. He's 6-0. Maybe he is a special. Maybe it could be a special season.
It could be.
But
and look, we've never had someone go undefeated the whole way. So maybe he can be the 72 Dolphins. Who knows?
More likely, he'll be the 2007 Pats or whatever year that was. So.
Oh, the 2011 Pats, yeah. Certainly.
What was the year? Yeah, the year they won 16-0 and then lost to the Giants. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2011. Yeah, I mean, look, it's more interesting to me. You've got 5 teams that are 4-2. I think that's interesting to see between LaMagna, Jacobs, Joe, Paul, yourself, and I'll throw Manny in there. He's 3-3. Bodson's 3-3. I mean, that's 7 teams. Who separates himself? Does anyone separate themselves? Certainly from a points for perspective so far, LaMagna and Joe, and to a slightly lesser extent, Jacobs and Paul, or Jacobs certainly, have sort of separated themselves on a week-to-week basis. That's what I'm curious. Is there separation within that kind of grouping to come and maybe to somewhat try to rival Justin? Because that's what I look at. I think it's hard to go from like unless somebody's just going to completely punt on future years, maybe even 2 or 3 years of draft picks. It's hard to have massive improvements, but you can improve maybe 2 or even 3 positions depending on what you do. I'm curious to see what other teams really try to make moves between now and the trade deadline to sort of position themselves, because 5 teams are 4-2, 7 teams are 500 or better, that excluding Justin. I mean, that's 2/3 of the league is over 500, is 500 or better. 3/4 of the league for that matter. That's a lot. I'd like to see what happens. Does someone separate themselves? Are there more moves to be made? I think that to me, I'm looking at that because I think there's a clear bottom 4 based on records, based on quality of team right now. And so it's really, can those rest of those teams, what do they do to try to separate themselves? Because some of them are not going to make the playoffs, and who wants to kind of go for it at the right moment or early to get ahead of that? Because they're all going to play each other. They're going to beat each other up and record wise and all that. But that's kind of what I got my eye on.
It's going to be interesting. And I'm, again, the weakest 4-2 team, and I'm looking at my schedule. I've got Evan this week and Drew next week. I may well be the worst 6-2 team in the history of the league. I mean, so I was planning to be, I thought, oh, I'll be a seller by the deadline. I'll see where it goes. It's going to be very hard for me to be a seller at 6-2. Although if you look at what Alvin Kamara is doing tonight, for anybody who needs a running back, he's been at least 14 points in all 4 of his games back. So high floor, high ceiling guy could potentially be coming to the market near you. So anyway, that's my own piece. I want to be conscious of time. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying if you would like a receiver, where I'm happy to negotiate a trade right now.
I know you already offered me Stephon Diggs for a first round pick, and that's just, not that was inherently imbalanced trade. It's just, I'm not a buyer right now. I might be in a week or two if I'm 6-2. We'll see.
I get it. It's a little early, for some people to spend the big bucks, but you gotta, spend money to make money.
Yeah, where would you call yourself? Would you call yourself a seller?
Or
wait and seer. Yeah.
No, I'm a seller. If the stack correction doesn't happen and I'm 3-3, I'm probably in
the
wait and see mode.
Stack correction. Yeah.
But I'm 2-4. I'm two games behind out of the playoffs, and I don't think I have enough quality to make that up. I've lost to Drew. Losing to Drew last week probably was a big blow. I could have been 4-2 and kind of feeling like how you feel, but I'll take an honest assessment of my team. I don't think I'm going to make the playoffs. I'm happy to hold and kind of go for that number 1 pick, but I'm also recognize that if there's an opportunity to be made to focus on next year, I'm not opposed to that. So and I think there are teams that I can help with some of my players. I've got some really good players that are kind of languishing on a bad team. So, at some point, I'm sure somebody's going to try to take advantage of that, but I don't know when.
Amen. All right. Well, it's almost my bedtime. So, any last things you want to cover before we drop here?
I don't know. I mean, there's so many different. We could talk anything. I think the biggest thing is I just hope that everybody stays safe. That everybody just is doing all right with everything going on in the world. It's just an emotionally charged time. There aren't easy answers. We saw Jacobs was here in town last week. We were able to spend some time in person with him, which is always a pleasure. Because he has some family in the area. We'll do a live pod with him next month. But it's just, I don't know. I'm just thinking about everybody and hoping everybody's okay and everyone's family is all right. And as we've talked away from this about it, it's everybody has lots of different things going on, and it's a very complicated situation, and just want everybody to be safe, and I think that's the biggest thing.
Couldn't have said it better. Have nothing substantial to add. I echo all those sentiments. It's a hard time.
Yeah, it's a hard time. So anyway, we'll sign off on
which is all the more reason we need fantasy football, because we need this outlet.
Is Taysom Hill going to score here? Nope. Taysom Hill did not score there.
Is Alvin not even thinking? All right, I got to go figure out what they're doing in the red zone here. All right, I appreciate it, Commish.